My name's David Wood. I'm chair of London Futurists. In this short video, I'd like to preview an event that London Futurists will be holding called Agenda for the Future. This will take place in both the morning and the afternoon of Saturday the 2nd of September in one of the main lecture theatres in Birkbeck College, which is in central London. We'll be in the Clore Management Centre, which is across Torrington Square from the main Birkbeck building. The theme of the event is Informed Debate on the Demands of the Future. There will be 10 speakers, each giving a TED-style talk for about 20 minutes, followed by around 10 minutes of audience Q&A. But to kick things off, I'll be giving a short introductory presentation. My own presentation will be called A Techno-Progressive Vision of a Comprehensively Better Future. In this talk, I'll be covering four critical limitations in current political thinking. And I'll be talking about how we can transcend these limitations to do better. The first of these limitations is techno-myopia. This means that most politicians and other leaders of society don't really understand the speed at which technological innovations are going to be enabling profound changes in human circumstances. Examples of the kind of changes that I have in mind include, first, technologies of automation. By this I don't just mean automation that can replace human muscle power, nor do I just mean technology that can replace human intellectual power and calculate more quickly and more effectively than us. But I mean that software in the not too distant future will be seen as emotionally intelligent. It will understand human emotions and respond to them. So we can look forward to robots that aren't just muscular, but are also creative and compassionate. We might even say they have spiritual qualities. The result of this will be to disrupt the jobs of at least 80% of people, possibly more, very profoundly. Are politicians and society's leaders anticipating this? To my view, hardly at all. In parallel, we should consider technologies of human rejuvenation. These are technologies such as gene editing, stem cell therapies, 3D bioprinting, and more. The result of these technologies will be therapies that eliminate the diseases of aging. Diseases such as cancer, heart disease, and dementia, which get much worse the older people are, but which will, in the not too distant future, be tamed by these new therapies. These therapies will allow us to repair our bodies, our minds, and our spirits on a regular basis, and they'll work in conjunction with neuroenhancement technologies to allow us to much more regularly access higher planes of consciousness. We should also mention the technologies of interconnectivity, augmented and virtual realities, in which we see information from an electronic world as well as information from a physical world, technologies which rely on sensors everywhere, reporting all kinds of data and making sense of that data, which will have downsides as well as upsides. It will have big implications for our privacy and big implications for our security, especially as powerful malware and also powerful biological pathogens can spread much more quickly. Again, I ask, are political leaders and other society leaders ready for this? I don't think so. We're suffering collectively from techno-myopia. The second critical limitation in political thinking is techno-utopianism. By this I mean that the few people who do take radical technological changes seriously tend to be overconfident that these technological changes will somehow inevitably lead to huge improvements for humanity rather than any risks of destructive chaos and alienation. These techno-utopians seem to imagine that technology is like a one-way steam engine ride into the future, and that the task of society's leaders is to get things out of the way of the steam engine, get rid of regulations, get rid of politicians who are out of touch, and let technologists and entrepreneurs do what they do best without any interference. I say, however, that all technologies are two-edged swords. They're capable of many bad consequences as well as many good consequences. And there's no predetermined outcome from technologies. It very much depends on how humans shape and steer these technologies. If we just leave things to self-motivated entrepreneurs, we risk market failures. For example, when there are smaller numbers of companies whose interests fail to align with those of consumers as a whole, we may end up in what's been called surveillance capitalism. Companies who know us very well because they monitor what we do, where we click, where we spend money, which websites we visit, where on the screen we are looking. Such companies are able to manipulate us in ways that are not best aligned with our own profound interests. It's not just big corporations who could be manipulating us through this new technology. We have to fear big brother governments. Governments who have more powers than ever before to be autocratic, to spy on us, to manipulate us, and to control us. More generally, markets tend to underprice things with bad consequences for the environment, bad consequences for society as a whole, bad consequences for the longer term. They fail to put a proper price on externalities. And then we see consequences such as impacts on the environment via increased climate chaos. We also see risks of financial disaster, where banks are able to pursue their own short-term interests and end up causing near financial calamity. As well as fearing market failures, we have to fear social failures. Growing inequality of access, whereby more and more people see a wealthy minority of the population living almost like gods, and people feeling somehow their lives in comparison are meaningless. They may have access to the basic necessities of life, but they will feel that they are missing out on the most important medical enhancements, the most important new technologies, and so forth. And given such social failures, there's the risk of more people being attracted towards extremist ideologies of various kinds, violence and turning onto weaponry, indeed accessing technology and turning it into horrific weapons of mass destruction. So I say, those of us who care about the future need to beware an excess of a libertarian philosophy that says, hands off. I say instead, the market needs influence, technology needs steering, and society as a whole needs institutions made up of people to think hard about where technology is going. This brings us to the third limitation of current politics, which is institutional inflexibility. Many of our institutions are not fit for purpose. Regulators are often trying to preserve issues from the past, trying to protect companies from the past, and are insufficiently aware of the possibilities of the future. So we see a lack of agility and responsiveness by regulators, by parliamentarians, and by other government institutions. And through all this, many times it's vested interests who benefit disproportionately, instead of society as a whole gaining full benefits of new technology which is at hand. The solutions to institutional inflexibility are not to try to abolish institutions. On the contrary, it is to fix institutions, often by using many of the same technological ideas, so we can end up with better governance, what we might call democracy 2.0, in which the best ideas of everybody are able to interact, and through a wisdom of crowds we will learn what is the best solution for all of the social and technological issues facing us. We can have automated fact-checking to help us distinguish much more quickly from what is reliable and what is unreliable. Now, this new technology for potentially better governance won't come about just by such technology being proposed. We will also need important cultural changes ahead so that our institutions are freed from their current inertias and inflexibility. We're going to need a much greater bias towards transparency, favouring openness rather than secrecy. We're going to need a greater culture of responsibility, whereby people realize that there are big, bad consequences to them if they distribute, knowingly, fake news. In the same way that today, people who advertise things falsely, or people who make false statements about the financial well-being of their corporations, face significant penalties. Another cultural change that's necessary is that instead of trying to score points off each other, we should all be looking to build bridges, trying to get a combined vision in which all people from all backgrounds can see how their aspirations can be fulfilled. This is not a zero-sum game. This is a game in which everybody can benefit, provided we can find a way to share the abundance of technology wisely. And rather than being focused on the past, rather than trying to bring back a previous era in which things were different, we should look more to a better future, trying to accelerate getting to the better politics of the future, better technology of the future, and as a result, we can look forward to a comprehensively better society, in which there are smarter institutions, in which we fight against the tendency towards tech institutions and regulations being more convoluted and more complex. We understand more clearly what's truly important. We have institutions in which there are easier creation and pursuit of cross-party initiatives, rather than things being hostage to the current system of only 2 or 3 main parties. And we'll end up with a network of international learning in which initiatives in one country can learn from what works elsewhere, and we can join up into an international progress. The fourth critical limitation in modern-day political thinking is that there are too many diminutive visions, small-minded visions, which manage to inspire people for a while, but which fail to tap into the deepest positive motivations of us all. So we lack a compelling shared vision of a comprehensively better future. What dominates instead are a number of uninspiring, narrow ambitions. For example, there's a lot of focus on we should have our economy growing. Let's get our GDP, our gross domestic product, raised. And I don't deny that economic growth is important. And personally, I believe that sustainable green growth is possible. But man cannot live by bread alone. Indeed, we need a bigger vision to sustain us. And in any case, GDP is a weak measure of what really matters about economic flourishing. Nor should we focus on the age-old idea of increased employment, perhaps even full employment. What is so central about paid work? We can see that instead as a relic of a previous era of humanity. The goal is not full human employment. The goal is full and increased human flourishing. Humans can be supported by an abundance which is made available by technology. Another problem with many of the visions that motivate modern-day political parties is the localism or nationalism. Instead of talking about my country first or make my country great again, we need to realize that the precondition for any one country to succeed is that there's a healthy global system of cooperation and sharing. Finally, rather than people looking backwards to the likes of the 10 Commandments or some other bygone age, for example, some political parties seem to imagine everything was rosy in the 1950s or the 1970s. Instead, we should be looking forward to a better future in which humanity is not repeating what was done in the past, but humanity is reaching new levels of capability, new levels of experience, new levels of consciousness. I quote here the science fiction writer Arthur C. Clarke, who, on the occasion of the launch of the film 2001, remarked, "The goal of the future is full unemployment, so we can play." That was 1969. Fast forward to 2017. I'm currently writing up this set of ideas in a new book called Transcending Politics, a techno-progressive roadmap to a comprehensively better future. This book is due to be published sometime in the second half of this year. Draft chapters are already available for preview on the transpolitica.org website. I welcome your online comments. To review the 4 critical limitations in current political thinking that I've covered and the solutions I've suggested, let's run through them one by one. To the limitation of techno-myopia, my solution is basically education, education, education. Clear-minded separation of what is science fact from what is science fiction, freed from all the biases and vested interests who seek to distort these matters one way or the other. To the critical limitation of techno-utopianism, I advocate an increased emphasis on the human, social and political aspects of technology adoption. In this way, we will no longer think that we should just be pressing the accelerator or just be pressing the brake of technological progress. Instead, we will be using all the tools at our disposal, sometimes accelerating, sometimes braking, and frequently steering. To the critical limitation of institutional inflexibility, I am advocating skillful application of technology to improve politics and regulations. Not that we'll have less politics and less regulation, but we will have better politics and better regulations. And to the problem of diminutive visions, which fail to inspire people properly and therefore lead us divided, I offer a credible techno-progressive vision of a comprehensively better future, as I'm trying to spell out now and as I'm covering in more detail in my forthcoming book. Briefly, I see this techno-progressive vision as being capable to deliver the following by around 2040, perhaps sooner. Via an acceleration of next-generation green technologies, we can have a sustainable abundance of clean energy. Via an acceleration of next-generation synthetic biology, we can have a sustainable abundance of healthy food for everybody. Via an acceleration of nanotechnology, including molecular manufacturing, we can have an abundance of all the material goods that are necessary for healthy, successful living. Via an acceleration of next-generation rejuvenation biotechnology, we can have an abundance of affordable health. And this includes, via an acceleration of cogno-technology, an abundance of all-round intelligence, not just rational intelligence, but also emotional intelligence, network intelligence, and spiritual intelligence. And via an acceleration of automation, wisely deployed, we will be freed from the burdens of working in ways that don't really satisfy us, and we will be led instead to an abundance of time for creativity. Via geotechnologies, we will increasingly be safe from threats from natural disasters. Via space technology, we'll increasingly be able to explore the wonders of external space, the solar system and beyond. Via next-generation virtual reality, VR, we'll also be able to explore increasingly wonderful and amazing internal spaces. Via collab technology, we'll be able to cooperate better despite our differences. Via improved fintech, we will be safe from the threats of financial disaster, and we will be also more able to have financial resources allocated fairly to the people who have the best ideas for human enhancement and human flourishing. And last but not least, via the application of technologies to politics, via what we might call politech, we will see an acceleration of effective, fair, productive political processes. All of these steps are necessary to achieving this comprehensively better society, but it's my reflection that the 3 at the bottom are in some ways most fundamental. unless we improve our ability to collaborate, unless we improve our economics and our financial world, and unless we improve our politics, we will not get to this better world. The path to a healthier society inevitably involves improved politics. So that's basically my introduction to the other topics that will be covered on the agenda for the future. There will be 10 speakers, each of whom will be talking about some aspects of improved economics, improved collaboration, improved politics. I don't expect all of them to sign up to everything I've just said, far from it. But instead, the goal is to have an informed debate on the demands of the future. We'll be opening the doors at about 9:15. I'll start speaking around 9:45, and then we'll move into the various groups of speakers who will be doing their TED-style talks. Tickets are still available via the London Futurists meetup page. They're available for £18 in advance, or if you turn up on the day without a ticket and there is still space, you can get in for £20. And we're charging this to cover the costs of room hire and IT expenses and for the refreshments that are available in the networking portions. I hope to see you there and to hear your contributions to this very important debate. Thanks for listening.